Right guys, we're going to just make sure our camera is at square ones. So this is almost a bit of slang, and it just means that all your settings with their normal or ordinary settings before you start. It's really worth doing this at the start of every shoot day. So starting at the front of the camera and working our way back, we're going to make sure that we've got our ND switched all the way off. I'll just get up so I can show you that. So that's off there. Next thing is make sure you've got your focus to manual here. Next thing is to make sure you've got your iris set to manual. And there's only really one way of making sure this is on manual. And that's if I bring this a bit closer and show you the viewfinder. You'll see the f-stop comes in and then it disappears. So it's better if I do that against black for you. So when it's not there, it means you're on auto iris, and the camera will decide what the iris should be stopped, which should be set to for proper exposure. We don't really want to be doing that. We want that on manual. So there it is on manual. The next thing that appears in the viewfinder when it's on manual is the gain. We need to make sure we've got these three buttons here. We've got gain, white balance and shutter speed. All these do is alter between automatic and manual. So we're going to make sure that gain is on manual, and we know that because on the viewfinder we can see a value for gain, and that's measured in dB. So you see a number in dB, that's your gain. Okay, next thing is to make sure you're on a manual white balance. In this case, set to there, A or B. So on your white balance selector switch, you've got A, B or B, A and preset. So if you look in the viewfinder again, you'll see that if we take, white balance onto automatic, again the symbol disappears. And that's because Sony way for all of the settings really. Press it on, you get a white balance setting again. Okay, so it's on manual now, you get a white balance setting. To set the white balance, I'm just going to frame up some neutral colour. In this case we've got a reflector just out of shot. It's really important that I make sure my exposure is wide before I do a white balance. And to do the white balance, I press the circular button here. I do not press this here. That'll just take it back onto automatic. Press that down. And now the white balance symbol stopped flashing and came up with a number. And now I know I've done a white balance. Next thing for square ones is to make sure that your shutter speed is on manual, and again press shutter and you'll see in the viewfinder you get a value, and I need to set that for normal shooting to 50, and that's how you make sure you're at square ones. I'm going to look at how to balance a tripod head. So this one we've got here is a Manfrotto 504. Some basic controls we need to know about. First of all, on this side, you've got the counterbalance. The job of the counterbalance is to fight against the weight of the camera and bring the camera up to centre. Okay. On the other side, we've got tilt friction. So the job of the tilt friction is to resist that bounce, like so. So how to balance your camera. First of all, make sure that all your controls are switched off on the tilt, like so. Using this key here, get your camera so you find the centre of gravity. So this is the balance point essentially. The camera doesn't go forward, doesn't go back. It's a good idea that you level your tripod using the spirit level before you do this. Nope, I just slipped. I'll try that again. Doesn't have to be spot on, and we probably need to go back and do this anyway in the later stages. So once you've got it balanced so it doesn't go forward or backward, tighten it on the wedge plate. So this is called the wedge lock, and it pushes out a little bit of metal and it stops the camera from going back or forth. So the first thing we're going to do, now we've done that, or rather the second thing we're going to do, is adjust, using your right hand, the counterbalance. So now the camera should come back to centre. If it goes too far, it flops about, don't worry too much. Just go back to the previous step and move the camera back ever so slightly in this case. And now we're going to look, not quite, go forward a bit. You'll find this is harder if you're using a lighter camera. It's good to have a bit of weight to fight against the tripod. So that isn't quite perfect, but it'll do for now. So it's almost level. Next thing we need to do with the left hand is increase the tilt drag or tilt friction. So this adds resistance. And the ultimate aim is to be able to point the camera 45 degrees towards the floor. Take your hands off and it stays there. Right folks, so we're going to talk about handheld camera work now. First of all, you need to make a decision when to use handheld and when not to use it. The big reason you want to use it is it saves time, an awful lot of time. But if you're going to shoot a sequence just by holding the camera, moving the camera and shooting the whole sequence each time, the whole action, you're not going to save a lot of time. What we're hoping to do is shoot the whole sequence in one shot. So one shot, one sequence. Let's talk a little bit about the technique. Let's talk about grip. First of all, I'm going to show you a position from the shoulder. And the nice thing about this position, this grip, is that it's got 3 contact points. It's the only real position it has. First of all, contact point 1 into the fleshy bit of your shoulder. Contact point 2, your hand under the lens hood. Also, use your thumb for the iris control, your middle finger for zoom, and your front finger there of the 3 for focus. We won't use the middle one an awful lot because you've got your 3rd contact point, which is on the pistol grip, and that also allows you to zoom. Okay, so that's the first position, and that's probably the most stable you'll ever use. Okay, second position is the one that a lot of beginners use, and it's just out like this. Eventually, you'll start to wobble and it'll get really painful. So it won't do you any good, and it won't do your pictures any good. Okay. There's a modified version of that, which is to have your hand under your elbow to grip it. That kind of works, but it doesn't really do much for stability. Okay, so our kind of 4th position is down from the hip. You want to make sure that you can hold the camera under the viewfinder area like that, under the LCD display, okay? If you can't, then you haven't got a good enough grip. Wrap this thumb around the carry handle like so. Sorry guys, so you can see it, yeah? That gives you a really secure grip. Your index finger on your left hand zooms in, your thumb on your right hand zooms out. Okay. This is quite good from shooting from the hip. It allows you to zoom in and move at the same time. You've got access to expanded focus, which is here, which just magnifies the picture, allows you to check focus whilst you're on shot. Nice thing about expanded focus is when you press it, it doesn't record the zoomed in picture. So you can actually use it whilst you're shooting, whilst you're recording. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is eyes. So we'll go back to the favourite position. Make sure you keep your left eye open so you can see people coming towards you, or see what object you're about to walk into. Like we said before, palm under the hood, this finger for focus, that for zoom, that for iris. So you need to control the iris because with handheld, unlike tripod work, as you move around more, you'll see that the exposure will change and you'll need to follow it. If the light gets brighter or darker, you need to either close or open your iris. Okay folks, so that's that dealt with. The next thing we're going to talk about, just one little health and safety tip. If you have your camera on your shoulder all day like that, you'll start to do yourself some damage. So what you need to do, whenever you've not got, it doesn't really make much difference with cameras that are this light, like the Nx5, but when you're not operating the camera, keep it on your opposite shoulder. And that just takes the weight off this shoulder, pulls the muscles across, they open up, get a bit more oxygen into them, and you don't get fatigued quite so quickly. Okay, next thing we need to talk about is feet. Standard position is a marksman position where you have your feet just outside of your shoulders, and that gives you a much more stable position than this. So I can easily get pushed over like that, but so long as I've got my feet outside here, it's very unlikely. You want just a little bit of bend in your knees. Okay, so that's all fine for static shots, but what about moving shots? Well, if we want to do a pan, the best thing to do is to point your feet in the direction of the thing you're going to pan to, and then twist your body round on your hips to the thing you want to pan from. And then it's a really easy move. So always start with your feet pointed towards the thing you're going to pan to, unless you're going to spend a lot longer on the thing you're going to pan from. In this case is over here, in which case start with your feet towards them. And then if you're just going to pan over here for a couple of seconds after you've stayed over there for maybe a few minutes, it means that your body is in its contorted form for the least amount of time. Okay, movements. So, we have two problems with handheld. The problem collectively is called wobble, but it's actually made up of two problems. The first one is pitch, which is this, and then roll, which is that. And the problem is when you walk, you have both pitch and roll. So what we need to do is when we walk, our feet placement, rather than being our normal walking style, which is where you allow yourself to fall and then you catch yourself, we're going to trace the floor with our feet. Sometimes sound recorders aren't too keen on this because it makes a dragging noise. So if that's the case, just keep your feet just above the floor. And if you ever get pushed or shoved or you trip, you naturally go into that position. If you walk like this and you get pushed, it's likely you're going to fall over. So first of all, let's talk about tracking in, tracking out. So when we track in, we're going to walk in like so. When we track out, we'll walk back. Walking backward is dangerous. Always make sure you've got somebody to guide you backwards. A really good system is if you have an assistant, a camera assistant or director, that when you walk towards backwards and you're going to hit something, they just tap you on your shoulder, whichever side the object is coming up on. And that's a really good system, that works very well. Okay, so there you have it, that's the basics of handheld.